name is Jacqui Smith, and thank you. Welcome to another episode of Resistance Television with Women's March. And today we have a very special topic that we want to talk about, and that's the homeless epidemic among women, both nationally and locally here in Monterey County. And nationally, each night across America, over 500,000 people are living on the streets. They're sleeping in tents, cars, homeless shelters, and other places that's deemed uninhabitable. And of that number, 200,000 are people and families, and 358,000 are individuals. And a quarter of the entire group for both sets are children. And in Monterey County, unfortunately, due to the rising rent costs and the severe lack of affordable housing, according to the biannual point-in-time homeless count census that was conducted on January the 25th in 2017 by the Coalition of Homelessness, there were 2,837 individuals that were experiencing homelessness. And of that amount, 36% were women, and which is a sharp increase from 2015, where there were 30% were women. And of that, 16% identified as LGBTQ. I'm so sorry if I didn't say that right. And so another interesting point is that while the risk of homelessness is highest among households headed by single women and families with children under the age of 6, very few families experiencing homelessness are unsheltered because public services serve 90% of homeless families in the United States. And so that was very interesting to know. And then, so where does that leave women who don't have children or who have suffered from mental health issues or substance abuse issues and are considered to be identified as LGBTQ? And these women are often left out of the scope of the shelters because, like I said, it's mostly geared towards those with children. And so to get an understanding about the challenges that these unique women face, this subgroup of women, I had the pleasure, well, not so much pleasure because, you know, they are living on the streets, but I was able to interview a LGBTQ couple by the name of Jane and Eilani Dixon. And they basically walked me through a day of their life. And this was conducted in Chinatown, and they've been homeless for almost a year now. And they're out there with themselves, their dog, and then also their daughters are there with them as well, their adult daughters. And they face a lot of unique challenges. And one of them is that they are a couple. And so when it comes to shelters, they won't let them remain a couple when it comes to sleeping situation settings. They have to sleep in separate beds, and they can't really show as much as affection as they would like, and that's how they feel. It's not like these rules are being forced on them. It's just the way that they feel the tone of the environment is, where they're going to frown upon it, so they don't feel comfortable. Also, they had mentioned the fact that their pet, they have a beloved dog, and he's like a child to them. He's also their protector. He's a pit bull. And they're not going to they feel the shelters will not let them bring the animal in there with them. And so let's say they decide that they're going to go into the shelter, so they have to give up the animal and give it to someone. And it doesn't work out. Maybe a day or two or a week goes by, and they have to leave the shelter. So there they go. They're back on the streets. They don't have their protection, their source of protection, the animal. It's not like they can go and find another dog. And if they do, they have to raise it from a puppy, and that's not going to be much help when they're outside. So there's a lot of different factors as to the reason why they feel they need to hold on to their animal as well as their relationship. So let's take a look at their life and see what they have to say about it. And today's show is about the epidemic of homelessness among women here in the United States of America and locally here in Chinatown. And we have the pleasure of interviewing two homeless women right now, and they're a couple, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, my name's Eilani. And our dog, Bossy.
So what is your typical day like?
Typical day would be to wake up between 6:30 and 7 so you can make the restroom break, you know, because you're holding it all night long because you don't want to use the restrooms out here. And then once you get started, you go to the restroom, you start getting the coffees, your breakfast, your showers, you know, checking in your mail, getting your charges for your phone, you know, seeing what needs to be done, then making your rounds with everybody, making sure everything's okay, you know, making sure we're all right and we have what we need. And then I have 2 daughters out here too, so it kind of makes it. I've been here. I was here before, like 10 years ago. Come out. Dorothy's, but now I've been back for like maybe 3-4 months now.
Do you feel safe here? Like, you feel pretty safe?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't feel threatened. I don't feel threatened. I don't feel unsafe. I don't feel like I need to, no, not at all. These people are more our family than
most of the people are more good than that.
I think men got more opportunities than us women do. More of us women struggle more than the men do, because the men, they have more services for them than more women. I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain.
It's hard, a hard thing to get used to is not having running water.
Right.
Like available.
Yeah.
Health Center and Dorothy's are really good. I'm very very impressed at the services they provide.
These are the daily services that we use on a daily basis. We start from the health center to the learning center to Dorothy's to the mission. Every day, back and forth, up all day. You know, if they take care of all of our needs. We got the shower to the feeding to Yeah, my problem is I can't get in because I have a pet, and I'm not willing to give up my pet because that's my therapy and that's part of family now.
What would you like to be here to help you more as far as what's not here? Because we know Dorothy's is here, and they provide the food.
I think some of these people probably need some one-on-one with somebody to vent and let some of their frustrations out instead of taking it out on each other. Maybe if they could sit with somebody and just vent, you know, for like 5-10 minutes, it'll make a big difference. See, most of these people, they're not aware of all the services that are provided for them because nobody tells them everything, you know, or they're not even inquiring about it. Everybody.
Okay.
Everybody goes through their trials. Yeah. It's where you get back up and deal with it. Where if you stay down, you stay down. You defeated. I don't want to be defeated. You know, I got my 2 daughters out here. This is not where they need to be. And I shouldn't be out here. I feel better and safer here knowing that I got my eyes on them. Yeah, I don't like and then I just lost my dad, you know. It's like, thank you. My daughter lost her kid, you know. It's just like a bunch of trials.
I know it's hard being out here, and it's
on top of being homeless and struggling. No income, you know. Trying to get. I'm just trying to get get my Social Security started. I didn't want to get involved with taking away something that somebody else could use, you know. Because I really don't need it. I can wait for my Social Security. That's where I have to go and ask for help. Right. Categorize us. We're homeless, we're young, we're ignorant, we don't know nothing. I'm educated, I'm a very smart woman. I held a job down, I've been here, you know, I work for the Salvation Army. I do multiple things. I mean, you know, I got skills. I don't have to make myself to nobody. I know what I'm capable of. I can change because I'm out here. I'm just as good as you are. You just don't know it. When you're out here, you start to get paid for what you did now. Stuff to cook on. The workers are so good with us. We love them all. They're just awesome. They're awesome.
So I was just saying, you can do today, because you can get to tomorrow.
Oh, I'm going to get to tomorrow.
And the next day, and the next day. And this is temporary. It really is. It really is temporary. It is.
We have a permanent fix for this temporary solution, right?
Yes.
That's right.
I believe that.
I know it. No.
Yeah.
Next time you see me, we'll be either driving a car or in an apartment. We're in big colors, everything.
Right. So now you have your own place.
Yeah, we're home bodies. We like to be at home doing laundry, cooking, you know, gouging, coloring, puzzles. That's us. I'm ready. Let's go.
So I hope you all enjoyed that interview. I found it, I thought it was very interesting, and the ladies brought up a couple of interesting points. And one of the things that they stated was that they were not able to sleep inside the shelters because of their dog. So what do you think about that?
Well,
First off, before I begin, let me introduce you to my guest. My guest is Thomas, which we're going to call him Turtle. Turtle, and he's the founder and the CEO of Humble Beginnings and Medicine Wheels. And what he does is it's a resource center, well, a resource agency. He works as a conduit to connect the homeless community to much needed resources. And so he's going to be our guest today, our guest speaker. But before he begins to tell us about what he does and about his agency, I wanted to get his opinion and about what the women have said as far as the shelters are unable to take them because they have their animal. Right. We were just having, so what do you think?
So, well, again, this is a slippery slope because you're talking about a conscious choice to either decide to stay in a warm shelter and have a meal or stay out in the element with your animal. Most of mainstream society would say it's a pretty simple decision, warm shelter. But pet owners will tell you, I'm not leaving my dog, and so that's understandable because there's a separation. But we don't have any resources really for clients with animals, unfortunately, here on the peninsula anyways. There are programs, I'm sure, around the country that do accommodate animals and the homeless community. However, primarily women in the homeless community, which is what our main topic is. So if we could create a resource, though, locally, then that would probably solve the problem. But it's a really difficult thing to kind of, tackle because people are going to say, nope, you made that choice, and that's your bed, you lie in it, unfortunately, because they don't understand the dynamic. And that's how I feel about that.
Yeah, so my daughter and I, yesterday, we were having like this really rich conversation about this. And so she feels basically a little bit about what you said a few seconds ago about like they have a choice.
Right.
And basically they're choosing to stay outside and they'd rather sleep in a tent or in a car or wherever than just give up their animal because there are no resources for them. And so what do you suggest that they do? Like, what do you suggest that we should do as a community in order to address these needs immediately today?
Again, because there are no resources.
Yes.
Then what we do is probably facilitate them. If they need a tent, let's get them a tent.
Yes.
Let's get them into some sort of accommodation that's going to solve that problem. But I mean, again, you are just so stuck here because it just doesn't make sense to the average, citizen that you would have to make that decision. It's almost what they call a no-brainer, I guess. But there is zero resources for anybody with an animal. Your men's program I help here in Monterey, for example, doesn't allow animals, and so some people choose to battle the element. That is just the nature of the beast, unfortunately, but we have to find a solution, obviously. And that's where my foundation comes in, or what I do is, again, create a conduit between client and resource, so that when the client comes into the area, if they don't know how to get a tent or a tarp or a sleeping bag, then we connect them with that resource. That's my primary mission.
Okay, so speaking of your agency, why don't you tell us a little bit about it as far as where you're located, why you started it, just give us a lot of information about it.
Well, the address is Anywhere I'm Needed Avenue, Monterey, California. That's pretty much what it is, because my office is their environment out on the streets. Wherever I'm at, I'm more than willing to facilitate helping somebody to get what they need, whether it's tent, tarp, sleeping bag, bike, through the Medicine Wheels program, where we give away bikes to those that need it to improve their social condition. That's our primary focus, is to help each individual, one little victory at a time, improve their social condition. The one thing that I found when I started this foundation 6 years ago, and this community organization, is that there was an issue with connecting the client and the resource. It wasn't that there weren't resources, the client didn't know how to access that resource. So I started going out and talking to these individuals and saying, what do you need? And they would tell me, I need a tent. Okay, Pass the Word Ministries does breakfast in the park on Saturdays at El Estero, 9 o'clock in the morning. St. Vincent de Paul gives away a tent and sleeping bag once a year with identification, which can be a challenge.
Yes.
Because a lot of the client base doesn't have identification. So Pastoral Ministry doesn't require that at the breakfast in the park. All you have to do is show up, and they give away tents and tarps and sleeping bags and camping stoves and hygiene products, whatever they need to get through the week, and then they can come and get more the following week. So what we do, again, primarily is just connect the client and the resource, because that's where you have the gap. And that's my primary focus, is to help them to connect. And at the same time, though, you have to show people how to help those resources by donating. A lot of people don't want to help, they don't know how. So in my daily ventures, let's call them, when I'm out there, I talk to people about awareness. That's our primary focus. It's not about funding, it's about awareness, making people change their way of thinking about the homeless community. For example, the client that I have out in Carmel, who actually goes out every Sunday and cleans up the corner of Rio Road and Highway 1. Every Sunday, he just goes there and picks up all the trash. Now, that, I explained to him, you need to show that, you need to lead by example. Tell the rest of the people in your community, hey, look, man, I'm going out doing this. If we start doing this, now society looks at them differently. Now you have a different perception. And that is, I believe, key, because then people see, look, these guys aren't out there. They're not all out there just to live in the streets and be addicts and mentally ill. Some of them don't want, most of them don't want to be there. About 60% don't want to be in the position they're in. That other 40%, as we discussed earlier, that are mentally ill and addicts, we really can't do much for until the addict wants to go into recovery, or until we can get the mentally ill into a program or a resource. They're pretty much where they're at, and that's just, again, nature of the beast and what we have in this issue. However, that other 60% doesn't want to be there, and we need to change society's perception or view of them, because they are trying their best.
Right.
They are trying to improve their social condition. But the challenge is, as you said, one of them is the pet issue.
Yes, it is.
That's a huge challenge, not because they're ill or not willing to make change, but because there's that emotional attachment. However, going back to the 60% that don't want to be there, they're trying. They're either out there collecting recyclables, which is great, because now they're cleaning up the environment.
Yes,
they're doing the job that most people don't want to do, and some of them make a very healthy living doing that. I have a client, for example, who just bought a brand new $2,000 bike with money he had saved up from recycling. He's out every day, and he saved up enough money to buy a brand new, amazing bike that he rides around, and that's his transportation. That's the story we need to get out there. That's the perception we need.
As you were talking, I noticed that the people that you use for examples, which is awesome, but they were men. And so when you were talking about the different things that they can do in order to break the cycle of homelessness in their life, especially you're talking about how they were going out in the community and working, one of the problems that women face that's a challenge is becoming finding employment, right? Because a lot of these jobs, in order to get paid every day, they're day laborer jobs. So they're like construction, or you could be a painter, or stand on the corner and you get picked up to mow lawns. Women, we can't do that. So a lot of the jobs that they have to go for are like as housekeepers or working in retail and all these other aspects. And so when you're living in Chinatown, and this is the population that I'm referring to as far as women in Salinas as a homeless population, is because that's the women I just interviewed. They're working, like as you stated before, like a prison. There's one way in and one way out. And so they don't have access to those resources to find money to buy the shoes that they need, or a particular outfit. Yes, they donate clothes, but they need shoes that are non-slippery, or maybe steel-toe boots, and they need like the black pants, not just any type of black pants, but a specific black pants and a shirt. So they need all these things. A lot of them are elderly, so they can't work anyways. And then those that are not elderly, maybe they have a transportation problem, they don't receive GA because it's too hard to get on. So there's absolutely no money coming into that community. So how do they go out and get these resources that you're talking about, as far as Alizale Park, right? That's quite some ways from Chinatown that they would have to get to. And then our elderly couples, our elderly women, they can't get there. And then when you talk about, let's just say the things that they need, like the women mentioned, we need water. Yes, they do have a health station there, but it's closed throughout the night. They have to use the restroom. Women, we have these, our bodies work in a certain way where we need certain things. And when that comes, they don't have the resources to go get that. Dorothy's is closed, the Learning Center is closed, and they don't have, let's say, sanitation napkins, Fenneman high products, things of that nature. Or if you have an elderly person that wears Depends, they have an accident in the middle of the night. They don't have those type of things. So it's a lot of these different factors or challenges that these women are facing when you talk about them going out and just standing, getting work like men. And so what do you say about those type of things as far as when it comes to them accessing employment, that they're essentially unemployable, appearances, it's hard to keep up with the hygiene. Like I stated, the health center does have a place where they can clean up, but it's not open all the time. And it may be they have to be at work at 6 o'clock in the morning, especially if you're working at a gas station or Target or someplace. Also, I wanted to know, so that's what I wanted to know from you. So what about that?
Well, as far as the feminine hygiene products, for example,
Yes.
That, it's not, people want to help.
Yes.
Society does want to help, but they don't know how to help. They don't know how to do it. And volunteering is one aspect, but what about the actual, like you said, feminine hygiene products, for example? That is something that people need to know, because people will take down clothes and shoes, but they may not be aware or just even, thinking about the fact that, oh man, you know what, I'm stop by the dollar store, pick up a package of, feminine hygiene and take it down there with those clothes. It's not that the resources aren't available, it's just the awareness and the education of mainstream society to the needs of the homeless. A lot of them don't think about that. Batteries, for example.
Right.
Who would think to give the homeless community batteries, whether it's male or female? You don't think about that, but AAA batteries. These people work in say they're living in a tent. They're in the dark somewhere because they're obviously out of the public's eye as best as they can. So they need batteries for their headlights, which at Breakfast in the Park, they give out AAA batteries. So it's, again, not that they aren't available, it's that people aren't even aware of the fact that these are the needs that they have, or the challenges that the female homeless community has. So that's essentially what I think has to happen. We have to change the social view from mainstream society of what their perception is and needs of the homeless community are.
That's true too, because a lot of another thing that the community, it's just like an overall general consensus that homeless people are men, right? Because nationally, 70% are men, and then the rest are women. And so when you think of that, you just think of men only and not of women. And so even when you were speaking earlier, I noticed that you started talking about men.
Right.
And so do you come across like a lot of homeless women? And if so, what type of services do you find that they need?
Yeah, I it's funny, in my experience and what I've been doing this for over 6 years here on the peninsula, and particularly here in Monterey, is I generally don't distinguish between male and female. I just see a client. I see a human being. I don't see a male or female. So I apologize if I'm saying men mostly, but when I talk about the homeless community, I don't see gender. I just see that human being that needs something, and I'll facilitate those needs. So that's why I say men. It's not that I'm advocating for just men. It's just that
It's just interesting.
It's just something that I have found that I don't see. Like, I don't see color.
Yes.
My foundation, it doesn't matter what race you are,
Yes.
which is another completely off topic
Yes.
thing. But I just see that individual that needs help and facilitate them in whatever they need. So women, there's a huge challenge for them. Again, safety
Yes,
is
safety
a
number
huge
one.
issue, which the pet solves, but then the pet also creates a problem because it limits their resources,
Right.
which are zero. And we have to figure out how to help them. That's the biggest problem. It's not a matter of resources or lack of resources. It's a matter of putting the right resources and putting the right things in place so that their needs are met. That's, I think, our biggest challenge. That's what I've come and experienced being out here on the streets with these guys, up to 18, sometimes even 24 hours a day out in Monterey. Started in Salinas, and Salinas is a challenge in and of itself because that Chinatown area, like we discussed earlier, it is basically a prison on the streets. Large center block walls, gates, and one way in, one way out. And it's kind of like Salinas' dirty little secret, is that if we keep it centralized, then nobody sees it. The tourists don't see it and what have you. And that's, again, by design, that community has been put in that position. Fair? Absolutely not. But, it's the reality. And over here in Monterey, completely different type of environment, but same exact needs and same exact challenges. And how do you address those?
Well, here in Monterey, there's over 900 women that are currently homeless.
Yeah.
And it was also interesting when you were talking and you had remarked that you don't identify a homeless person by gender. And so maybe that's the problem,
Right.
that they are viewing all homeless people as just one person and looking at them as the same. So it's just that one person that you see on the corner with the sign up and unsavory, the person that you want to turn away from and not go towards, and not understanding that there's actually a woman, there as well with children, or basically just a woman, like a single woman. And so what about her? What about her needs? It's kind of like she's being left out, the scope of things.
Well, fortunately for women that have children, for example, there's here in Monterey, there's the One Starfish program. Again, I know it's not in Salinas, it's here in Monterey,
Yes.
but that doesn't mean that we can't implement some sort of program in Salinas as well. If we can find the volunteers and people to staff that kind of a program, which is basically a church gets a special permit at night, every night, for them to go and park their car with families with children, so that they have a safe place to sleep without having to worry about getting bothered by the cops or something happening crime-wise. That's here on the peninsula, but we could implement that kind of a program in Salinas as well. I'm sure it's all about awareness.
It is.
That's the big thing. It's not that this is a gender-based issue or a race-based issue or a homeless community issue. It's about raising our awareness to what was the trigger event, what brought that person to homelessness. Was it the homeless crash of 2000 or the home crash of 2008? Was it a medical catastrophe? Was it alcoholism or some sort of addiction? Most people's perception of the homeless community is that they're all addicts and lazy people that don't want to work. Correct?
Yes, unfortunately, yes, that is the case. And when it comes to women, you have an extra layer on that. And so now it's like, okay, you're supposed to be the matriarch of the family. You're supposed to hold it down. How could you lose control and end up on the streets like this? And so now you're carrying around this extra shame, and then you have your children, especially your daughters, if you have any, looking at you, trying to, decide if you're worthy or not, or, thinking all these things, and you don't want your child frowning up on you and frowning down on you or anything like that. So I feel like when it comes to homelessness in general, the women, single women in particular, really are being left out. And when you talk about these different programs, even when you stated they have the Night Owl program, the One Starfish, that's, it's for families.
Right.
They don't have a family. A lot of them don't have a car. And so, and then unfortunately, these women that live in Chinatown, they do have a drug issue, but that's mostly because 90%, as I said it before, the women who become homeless is due to domestic violence. So they're suffering from PTSD. And when they become homeless, they're already terrified that this man is going to chase them down. And so they kind of self-medicate. It may start off with drinking to keep warm. From that, they started getting into, involved with different people in that environment. And it just starts to down spiral. Next thing you know, they have a full-blown drug addiction problem. But that starts from someplace. And then, like I said, as a woman, it's hard to find employment, so you just can't get up and go get a job. So you only have two things you can really do, turn to prostitution or do something else. And so so they fall into this horrible abyss. And then it's like, everybody's going for the women with children, or they're looking at them, taking care of the men. But what about them? What about the single woman? What about the single elderly woman? And those who I see, and then those addicted to drugs and alcohol, that's who I see in Chinatown. And I feel Dorothy's place is doing the best that they can with what they have, an amazing job. However, the resources are still not getting to them. A lot of them, as you heard from the interview, they don't even know about the resources that they have. And that's because, like we said, they're trapped in that small community. And so we need service providers to connect to those in need. So they need to come to Chinatown. And so to serve these people. And from what I hear, it seems as if the providers are saying, no, you need to come to me. If you want help, Where's your motivation? You're lazy, you're this, you're that, you have a drug problem. So maybe you need to stop doing drugs first and give up your dog and conform to the way that I want you to be before you can get the help that you need. Right. So let's talk about that as far as meeting them where they are. Yeah. Because that's a new model that we're trying to do as social workers, and it's called a harm reduction model, where we're not trying to make sure that they're clean off drugs. We're not trying to make sure that they're following all the rules and they're doing everything that society tells them to do. We're trying to meet them exactly where you are. If you have a drug problem, when you're ready to deal with that, you can come talk to me about that. But for right now, let's work on your housing. Right. Let's work on all these other issues that's causing you to turn to drugs. Because unless I can give you something that makes you feel better than those drugs do, then there's nothing I can, like, I need to just basically just sit back, basically just shut up. Yeah. Because I'm not giving you anything better, you know, than what you already have. So here I am giving you all this information, but I'm not making you feel any better. I'm not really even helping you. I'm just referring you out.
Yeah. Unfortunately, here in Monterey County, we have a very poor, just basically access to any resources for women. Like you said, you know, that's the big problem. It's not anything other than the fact that for some reason, women are left out of the homeless picture, and it doesn't make sense. The only resource we have here in Monterey County really for women on the peninsula is the Women's Eye Health Program, which just recently started back up again, and I believe it was January.
Yes, and gathering place.
Right, and the gathering for women. But there is an absolute lack of resources for women here in Monterey County in particular that I've seen, that I know of, and that's what we have to change. That's where we have to find and create more resources for women with children, even without single women in general. But where do we start? That's the thing.
Yes, I think we all need to find a way to start this conversation between the different organizations. Like I said, I know the Gathering for Women, Gathering Place for Women, or is it Gathering for Women? So nevertheless, Gather for, where they're doing an awesome job every Tuesday. They have a pop-up clinic where they're offering different type of products, like we said, feminine products. They offer a warm meal. They have case management services now. Dorothy's have Women Alive. They offer a temporary shelter. They're trying to turn it into a permanent shelter right now. So I know there's a lot of different things that's in the works to address this issue, but there's so many more things going on for women with children, because as soon as you have a child and you get signed up in the system we call CARS or HMIS, then you're going to get something. But when you're single, no child, you fall under a certain age, they're kind of like just left out there. And I feel like something needs to be done. The first thing is this conversation that we're having now. This is the first step to letting everyone know that, you know, homelessness is just more than a man. It's more than a woman with a child. There are, there's elderly women out there. You know, there's women, you know, and I feel like, you know, we need to stop overlooking them and stop making them feel ashamed as if you're not virtuous because you've fallen into some obstacles. And like, you know, Jane has stated, and then her partner, is that that's one of the things she has stated. I have a master's degree. I am a worthy person. I have this, I have that. It's just she had to tell herself that because she doesn't have anyone telling her, saying anything different. Because when we look at her, we think about everything that she's not. And that appears in our face, our eyes, and everything. So she mirrors what she sees. So how could we instill in them who they should be? You know, just tell them, basically it goes back to what I was saying before, the harm reduction. So when you come at them with what you should be doing versus, you know, so what do you think about that, what I just said?
One of the things that, one of my primary teachings, or what I tell people, is we always talk about, in the homeless community, talk about resources, right? Why do we have to turn to resources? Why can't we as individuals do something for that individual? Like, you know, for example, just giving out a feminine hygiene product. Carry a Cliff Bar or banana with you. And when you see a homeless person, give them a Cliff Bar. Give them a healthier option to the food that they're eating, because most of them will eat Snap or potato chips instead, or eat potato chips or drink a soda instead of a healthy choice. So it's not about, I don't believe that it's about resources. And this is, again, from my experience in real time, being out there with my boots on the ground, is that it's not about resources. Why can't we just each, as human beings, our job as human beings is to take care of each other as human beings, I believe. And so if, instead of looking for where's the money at, where's the resource, shouldn't we as individuals take it upon ourselves, if we're willing to or want to just help that individual one little victory at a time. And that's what we have to do, is change awareness, change perception. The reality is it's going to take years, as Jane stated last year with her program where they were going to start housing people. There's plenty of beds available, 300 beds, but it's going to take 18 months to get them through the vetting process, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Well, why don't we concern ourselves with what's happening today? That person that's sitting on the street, that woman or male that is on the street, what do we do? What can we do to improve their social condition right now, in the present? Why are we always looking towards a resource? Why can't we as individuals do something to improve their social condition? Because that's going to happen now. They need help now. They don't need help 18 months from
Yes.
now. They need help today. And that's where my foundation and what I do is our main focus is to help them now, help them improve their condition in this very present. Not worry about what's 2 or 3 weeks down the road or months or years down the road. We need to do it now. And that can be done by each of us as individuals. Now, as individuals, we could make a difference, but as a collective, we could change the world.
We can, and I believe that one of the things is just, as you said it before, just changing how we perceive them to be. Far as when you see a homeless woman, instead of turning around and looking the other way, how about you go up to her and you say hello like you would any other person that passed you by?
Right.
So I believe that's the first thing, making her humane again,
Right,
letting her know you see her.
Give them value. Why I call them clients. Because
Yes.
they are clients, and that gives them value. We have to give them back their dignity, their value. And you can do that through, simple things as simple as going to a restaurant. If you're not going to eat all your food, take it with you, put it in a to-go tray, take it out, put it on top of a garbage can. All of my clients know that if there's a to-go tray on top of a garbage can, that's first come, first serve, and they can get what they need. They can get that food.
Right.
So, again, it all goes back to, just us being aware and finding out what their needs are and dealing with it today, not tomorrow.
And so I want to ask you one last thing before we start wrapping it up. Is that you had, you work a lot with the homeless community, that you know them quite personally. And so what could you tell our viewers how they can change their perception of them? Like, for instance, for the Chinatown Learning Project, for at the Learning Center, the service learners, they had created this beautiful collage of homeless individuals. And what they did is they took a picture of, I think it's about 30 or 40 portraits of the client, and then they posted it to the side of an abandoned building, and it's really high and it's humongous. So as you drive past, you can see it, and that's putting a face to them.
Sure.
But it's still just a picture on the building. So so how would you suggest to us as community members how we can start changing our perception of them, that they are not lazy, that they are not just, homeless, what do you call it, drug addicts and mentally ill people, and just people we should just cast off to the side and just throw in Chinatown and forget that they are human beings. They are your mother, they are your sister, they are your daughter. They are loved, they are wanted. So how do we as community members change our minds? First off, start believing that ourselves, and then give that back to them so they can instill in them. If you don't feel good about yourself, if you look at someone and they look at you as if you're nothing every single time you look at them, then how could you feel better about yourself or feel as if you are something when everybody tells you you're nothing?
Well, for starters, go up and ask them. I would say 80% of my clients probably will tell you their trigger event, how they got there. But if you go up and ask them, get to know them. I understand that a lot of people don't want to approach them because they're scary and what have you, but that's just again, perception. But if you go up to the majority of my clients and say, hey, how you doing, and introduce yourself, get to know them as a human being, make the emotional connection with them, give them back that value, that dignity by going up to them and asking them. They're not all, scary and what have you, and if you do that, you will find out things that you had no idea were going on as far as how they got there. Whether, again, like I said, medical catastrophe.
Right.
I have a client who had his own home and his own business in Seaside for 7 years, and then contracted MRSA last January, and only had about 5 months worth of savings, was in the hospital for 6 months, lost everything. And I would ask people, what do you think this trigger event was? Oh, he's lazy, he's an addict, whatever. And it actually, when I tell them what the trigger event was and how he ended up there, you could see the light bulb go off. I remember, that's somebody's sister, brother, aunt, uncle, mother, or daughter. If it was my son, who I have a 29-year-old son, I would only hope and pray that somebody would go out there and do that for him. So once you make that awareness and make that connection, guess what? People think differently. Now they're willing to go up because they have 100% of people I've ever asked that question of domestic violence, substance abuse recovery, homeless, or legally challenged parolee probationer, 100% of them either know somebody, if not themselves personally, were involved in one of those 4 categories. So it affects us all.
It does.
I know that from my experience. And we have to put a face on these people and give them back, like you said, dignity. And the only way we can do that is to go out and find out for ourselves.
I like what you said, but then also, I have to be devil's advocate again.
Okay.
That is very awkward and super hard to do because I had to do a class project, and it was called a community action project, where we had to go into the community and just approach a community member and then ask them, do they think that their community have any problems, and if so, what their problem is. I was terrified, and so were my classmates, and it was really awkward to just go up to the person and say, hey, do you have a problem, and just how do we even approach that person? How would the conversation begin? What would that look like? And we felt like we were trained to do all this, and we were terrified to do it. So just a regular person, I would think that would be hard. So what's another way that you think that they can do this without actually approaching someone? Because it takes a lot of guts to do that. So what's another thing that they can do?
Donate resources. Again, the mainstream social person doesn't know how to help. They want to help, but they don't know how, or they don't have time. They would much rather, instead of volunteer an hour of their time, they would rather just give you a check. I've experienced that in the past, where people say, look, man, I don't have time, but here's a check for X amount of dollars to give to this local resource. That's, again, it's just the nature of the beast, and it's a very complex problem that we have here. We all just need to get together and figure it out somehow or another. I don't have an answer for you. I don't have an answer for anybody.
I need an answer though.
But I can't, and I can't give, and I won't pretend like I can. But what I can do is be out there every day and figure out solutions. I'm a problem solver, and I've been able to find solutions for everything in my life. But I understand that it's not a wave of the magic wand and this problem's going to go away. We have to start thinking outside the box and figuring out new ways, and that's what my foundation does, and what we try to do is create that change in thinking so that we can solve these problems. But it's tough sledding.
Yes, it's going to take how do they say it takes a village to raise a child? Well, it's going to take a whole city and a country to raise us all out of this epidemic that we're facing, because as I stated before, it's not just here in Monterey County, but it's happening nationally. And it's largely due to the high rent cost and also the severe lack of affordable housing. And then those other factors, like we had the financial crisis, and some people are able to find work, others are not, and then they make it seem like we have all these jobs and the unemployment rate is going down, but people are screaming, where are these jobs? Because we can't find them. And then once you're in a homeless situation, like we were saying, it's hard to find different things that you need to even become employed again. And then it's just the whole self-doubt and the psychological nature of it all. As you were speaking, one of the things I was thinking, in order for people to change their perspective on homeless women in general, is that maybe they could start doing some research. Looking up on the internet, just reading some articles about what's going on. The San Francisco Chronicle, they're hosting a month-long series on the homeless crisis in California, and they're really focusing on the San Francisco area. So every day they have a different story about what that looks like up there. There's a lot of great work that you can find different agencies doing. There's Dorothy's, like I said, you can always find a way to contact them to donate feminine products, bras and panties, other things that you think women may need. And then you can always call the agency themselves and ask them, what do you need and how do I donate that? So donating your time is awesome too, but just doing your research and just changing your mind. It starts with that. It starts with self. So when you see that person, once you start reading about them and really understanding what they're going through, looking at different videos and just all those things, then when you see that person, maybe you won't be so quick to turn away. Maybe you'll approach them and then have that awkward conversation. And you never know what lives can happen, what lives can be changed. One day I pulled up to a corner, and I usually just give $1 to, anybody that's standing on the corner with the sign. So I'm just giving $1 just like I normally do. And then I just gave $1, not even looking. And then before, he didn't snatch it out of my hand. He kind of like held on to it. And he turns to me, he says, you know what? Thank you very much. I really appreciate you. And I'm like, what? He appreciate me? And after that, I start turning and I look at them now,
Yeah.
and I tell him, I appreciate you.
Yeah.
So here you go,
Yeah.
I appreciate you. So I use that word. So it's not like I appreciate it, but I appreciate you. And that really changed my entire mindset. It's just that simple thing. So I don't look at them, I look at them
Right.
differently.
But don't you think it's just as awkward for them as well? It is.
Yes, it is.
Because what you have is, they don't want, you don't want to look at them, but they don't want to look at you. They're not looking at you because they're ashamed of their position, because they know how they're being perceived. We as society don't look at them because we don't want to deal with that. We want to act like it doesn't exist. That's the thing
Or
we also
maybe
have to
we
think
see
about.
ourselves, because most
Right.
of us is just one paycheck away from
Yep.
being homeless
Yep.
ourselves. So maybe we just don't look at them because we see ourselves and are terrified. That could be me.
Yeah.
Because the way that this country is going right now, you just never know.
Right.
So we all just holding on to a wing
Yeah,
and a prayer,
the
right?
medical catastrophe
There you go.
example. That
Yes,
gentleman
yes.
was a hardworking guy, and just something happened, and it turned, and he's there. And I would tell people, we're all with our toes over the cliff.
We are.
We're all just sitting right there on that one paycheck. And if that happened to the majority of people out there, they'd end up in the same situation. And again, that goes back to awareness, though. That goes back to changing our perception of what the homeless problem is and how it got there. It's not just bums and lazy people and addicts. It's
It's
everybody.
so much more than
Yeah.
that. And then also, one of the things that we're going to be doing at the CSUMB Chinatown Learning Center on July the 27th, it's going to be Thursday to July the 27th from 12 to 3 p.m., is that we're going to be hosting the Service of Love Street Fair. And the whole point of that is to bring the service providers, like I was saying before, bring them to Chinatown. Those who's never been before,
Right.
and they think all these terrible things
Right.
when they think of Chinatown, because that's the narrative that they've been given, that it's a horrible place. But anyways, we're going to bring them there, and then we're going to have like about 250 clients, and they're going to be able to access services. Some of the people coming on the agencies is Manpower, Planned Parenthood, because women out there, we have a lot of women now. They lack reproductive services there. And like I said, it's kind of challenging to get to Planned Parenthood or other places they need to go. So we're going to bring it to them. We're also going to have whole person care, which is this awesome healthcare pilot program that's happening in Salinas, where they're going to come out to the Chinatown residents and provide them transportation to their healthcare providers, pay for medication. Those clients that I was telling you about before that's immobile, they can't like get out of there. So they're going to be coming to them. So we have them there. We have the Center for Employment Training. We have the different friends inside. They're like you. They're a resource place. It's just now opening, and it's going to be conducted by Wes. And that's something that just now came into actualization a couple of days ago. And so they're there. So they're going to be there at the fair. I can just think of so many right now. I'm kind of like went out of my mind, but that's going to be on Thursday from 12 until 3. So that's one of the things that I'm trying to do as a social worker and a community member, is connect them to these services. And my hope is by bringing these agencies here that they will see who these people are. Like they are, are real women and real men, and they're not just, somebody standing on the corner with their hand out. And then by them coming to Chinatown, they won't be so afraid, and then they'll start coming on their own and seeing these clients. And that's my wish, and that's why we have this. And we do it every couple of months. Before it was called the Chat Barbecue, but now we changed it to the Service of Love Provider Fair, because barbecue is kind of misleading when it's actually a resource fair.
Right.
So I know this has been such an interesting topic, and I can just go on and on, and I hope that we got to some of the points, the talking points that you want to talk about. And then also you told us you were going to be conducting your, doing your own show here at on What Resistance Television, and that's great. And if you could just, as we go out, if you could just tell us when that's going to be. And
it's called Little Victories is the name of our show, and as I was saying earlier, that's what it's about. The little victories, not the big win, just one individual at a time. And so what the show is going to basically be about is how to help the homeless, putting the to-go tray on the top of the garbage can. Carrying around, if you don't want to give them money, carry around some hygiene products with you, and give them that instead. My bicycle program, Medicine Wheels, where I build bikes and actually give them away to the disenfranchised. That program, how to do basic bicycle maintenance tips, because the last thing we want is somebody having no brakes, getting into a wreck, getting hurt, ending up in the hospital, and we as taxpayers have to take care of that if they don't have insurance. Those kind of topics is what my show will be about. And what
Yeah, so thank you so much, Turtle,
absolutely.
for joining me as my
Been a
guest
pleasure.
and co-host. I hope I didn't give you such a hard time,
No,
when
no.
you was leaving out the
No,
women, but I
no,
am
no,
one.
yeah,
This is
again,
Marshall.
not by design, just merely, I don't see gender, that's the
I
only reason,
know, but
I
we
get it,
all
yeah.
need to. I
Yes,
know, you know what?
sure,
We all
yeah,
want to be politically correct,
yeah,
not see
right,
race, not see
right.
gender, but sometimes we're
You have to-
over
right,
politically
yeah,
correct.
yes.
So we have to see women as separate from that of men because we are separate. We do have our challenges are totally different than theirs.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much, and
My pleasure.
that's the
That's
end of
it.
the show. You guys
Yay.
have a great day. Thank
Yep.
you.
Holy crap.